All right, guys, welcome back to another episode of Sky's the Limit podcast. I'm your host, Mike Doherty, and today we have Caleb David, who is a leading commercial real estate broker in Colorado Springs. Caleb specializes in office, medical, retail, industrial, and land, all things commercial, really. And as a broker and investor, he brings practical owner's perspective to his clients locally and nationally. Caleb is also the host of Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered podcast, which I have luckily been able to be a part of, which was amazing. And he's held leadership roles across multiple businesses, community organizations, all within Southern Colorado. So, Caleb, welcome. Thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks, Mike. It's great to be with you today.
Yeah, no, this is great. Round two.
Yeah.
So, one question I ask all of our guests here is, how the hell did you get started in real estate investing?
Yeah, no, that's a great question because, I think everybody's story is a little bit different. Mine is that I fell into it completely by accident. My background is actually in nonprofit sector and was running my own nonprofit at the time, was actually working for another one at the same time. And it was just, you get to the place where you get really burnt out. When you're doing some of that really hard work, you end up working really hard to something you're very, very passionate about. But, eventually, after 20 years, you can get to burn out pretty quick. And you're not necessarily making a whole lot of money. And so I'd moved to Colorado in 2012 and was doing the nonprofit thing again and was just like, man, that particular job just wasn't fulfilling. And so a friend came to me and he said, "Hey, have you ever thought about getting into real estate?" And I was like, "Sure, just like everybody else has. I'm going to be an investor. I'm going to do this. I'm going to flip houses," And he was like, "Well, it's a commercial real estate firm." And I'm like, "I know nothing about it. I mean, absolutely nothing." And so he said, "Well, this boutique firm that I've worked with is looking for a part-time assistant and possibly someone to move into brokerage. Would you be interested?" And I was like, well, I was in my mid 30s at the time. I'm like, if I'm not going to do it now, I'm never going to do it. I'm going to kind of stay stuck on the same hamster wheel for the next 20, 30 years. And so I decided to take the leap of faith. And I was lucky in that I got a part-time salary, didn't cover nearly half my bills, but I just thought, let's just give it a shot. So they said, try it for 90 days. If you like it, go get your license and then let's run. And so, I got to the 90-day mark. There was another nonprofit job that came up that I thought I'd be really good at. But I was like, man, you're limited to a salary, right? And then you're limited to donors and budgets and all of that. So I just said at the 90 days, let's go for it. So I went and got my online course, knocked it out in 30 days and got licensed. And so I just decided, let's go for it. And within the first year, I was voted by my peers as the Rookie of the Year. And then the phone started to ring. The title company started calling. The lenders started calling. And then I was able to, through that, lots of networking, lots of hard work, probably too much work. I got established. And about 3 to 4 years in, I was like, okay, I think this could actually be a career. And something that was really attractive to me about real estate was being in control of my own destiny, being in control of, how much time I work, how much money I make, and obviously there's outside factors that you can't control. But I just really was attracted to the idea of getting involved in the community and using commercial real estate as a way to make an impact. And so that's what I've been doing now for almost 13 years.
Yeah, haven't looked back, right?
And haven't looked back. There's been a few times where I've been like, am I sure I still want to do this? The last 3 years, with interest rates and, elections and all of that, it was rough. There's a couple times where I was like, yeah, maybe I need to consider something else. But now we're seeing a shift in the market and, looking to build my team currently.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. So now, do you just focus on commercial real estate, or do you also dip into helping out residential clients, single family homes, or
Yeah, no,
units?
I personally just do commercial. I do multifamily, but on the residential side, that's not my area of competence. So, I always refer that out. But, I think the housing market, being aware of what's going on in it is very important because that does affect commercial as well.
Yeah, absolutely. So, you cover everything from the commercial space, office, industrial land,
Mm-hmm.
mixed use stuff, multifamily
Yeah.
you talked about. Where are you seeing the biggest opportunities, both in Colorado and maybe just nationally for the listeners?
Yeah, I mean, the industrial market has been hot ever since COVID. I mean, that has just been, we've seen when I first got into the business, you could buy an industrial building for $40 a square foot. Now in the Colorado Springs market, you're lucky to find something under $200 a square foot. But the demand there has remained strong. The multifamily market has been very, very, it's been overworked. Some properties have changed hands 3, 4 times in a matter of 4 to 5 years. So that's a little bit hard of a market to get into right now. Because everybody's cost of everything is up. And so we're seeing a lot of slowdown in the multifamily sector, but retail is still very strong in Colorado Springs, and office. Something that people don't know is secondary markets haven't got as hardly hit, with the office crisis and the amount of vacancy. So you go to Denver and you'll find a massive vacancy rate. Downtown Denver could be anywhere from, 30 to 60%, depending upon where you're at. Whereas in Colorado Springs, it was somewhat of an insulated market. We've definitely seen the demand for office go down as far as larger spaces. But when you've got, Colorado Springs has military, we've got, 3 bases, we've got the Air Force Academy, we've got a lot of military, subsidies and companies that work around that. So that has remained really strong. And we also have a very strong tourism presence. So, there are pockets that, retail is remaining pretty strong, but we've just seen the behaviors of tenants change from the bigger, more open spaces to smaller footprints where they have a warehouse where they're doing online orders and they're using that to refill because the price of industrial is less than retail space. So we're just seeing a change of behaviors. And in the office market, we're seeing a lot of people going to more of a flex office type model, where folks are, it's not everybody in the office. People are coming back to the office more, but it's more of a space where there's certain people that have their private offices, but then you've got bullpen area, you've got flexible workspaces, you've got a kitchen, you've got all these things where it's a little bit more experiential, and functional for where people are at in the workforce today.
Yeah, no, it makes sense. What do you, for the multifamily space, what are you generally seeing in established, let's call 6 unit, 10 unit trade for cap rate wise?
Right now we're not seeing a whole lot of trading on that, but in the past, I would say historically, a lot of people were looking for that, to increase rents, that value add. So we would see stuff, trade at 5, 5.5, on the low end, and all the way up to 8%, depending on the property and how it's performing. But that's probably about the general cap rate that we've seen those trade historically.
Okay. Yeah, we're probably pretty similar here in Connecticut. Areas like Stanford, Fairfield, Greenwich that are closer to New York City, they trade at, low single digit, mid single digit cap rates, the 3, 4, 5%. But,
Yeah,
and I'm always wondering, to me, one of the, kind of golden tickets in commercial real estate is like land lease if you can get it, or even just a triple net lease industrial building, for example.
yeah,
And if you could pick that up at, a 6, 7 cap or a single, like a single tenant Starbucks that's triple
yeah,
net and they're doing everything, even the construction. I'm
yeah.
like, why? And I get it, I own a bunch of multifamily and some other stuff, but I'm like, why? Personally, I'm asking myself, like, why am I not focused more on that versus
Mhm.
obviously there's way more inventory in multifamily, but for the same kind of return at the end of the day and a lot less headache, why not just focus on the single tenant triple net lease stuff, right?
Yeah,
I'm like, what am I
yeah.
what am I missing here?
Yeah, no, I mean, I think if you can get a national, that's in there for 10, 15, sometimes even 20 years, there's great opportunity there, and, obviously people have to have that capital to, afford those because they are higher priced, but it's because of the value that you're getting back. Right. And so, but I think it's important with those, I personally am more of a fan of a multi-tenant building because it kind of mitigates some of that risk. Right. And that in and out. And, if Starbucks decides to close down a location and open up a new one, then what are you going to do? So you
Yes.
really have to have an understanding of that lease and is there a corporate guarantee of that lease, even if they move out. So that's definitely something that investors should be looking for is, and also understanding the trends of what's happening in that area. And we're seeing secondary markets actually be stronger than your main like your Denvers or your New York City, the Phoenix, so some of these secondary markets are really starting to thrive and have a little bit better of a risk mitigation.
Yeah. What would you say to someone listening? Maybe that's something that most people can get completely wrong about commercial real estate, especially when they're coming from the residential side. So maybe you
Yeah.
can just give a quick example, maybe a quick breakdown of the difference. Let's talk financing. That's one of the biggest difference: financing a commercial property versus a
Yeah.
residential property. So if someone owns a single family rental or a small two family, but they want to get into commercial, what are some things they should be thinking about,
Yeah.
saving up for, asking questions about?
Yeah, I think understanding what your goal is long term, and then working with, I think it's important that you work with a great broker that understands the market that you're looking in, and that is not looking just to do a transaction. There's a lot more to consider. Environmental issues, zoning, vacancy rates. What are the leases that are in place, and having the ability in the due diligence process to have a broker or someone that is an expert walk you through, what to expect. If you're looking at a property that has three tenants in it, and one of them has a year left, the other ones have been in there for 30 years, things to be thinking about is, well, if there's a year left in a lease, there's not a whole lot of value there. We don't know if they're going to renew or not. What are their renewal options? And a lender's going to take all those things into consideration as well. On an investment property, you're going to have, 30, we're seeing right now 30 to 40% down. So taking that into consideration. And I think even before you go into really actively searching, have a conversation with your CPA and your tax advisor to find out what are some of the best routes to go and how can you best be protected tax wise. And, don't get into a building that stretches you out, and, looking at buildings, are there reserves available? How much work has been done? Are there capital improvements you've got to think about, like redoing the parking lot, redoing HVAC or roof? All of those things are definite considerations. And on the financing side, finding a good partner and really shopping that and having conversations with multiple lenders, whether they be private, or if you're doing it with some other investors that are going in with you, understanding what are the risks. Partnerships can be good and partnerships can be bad. And I think it's really taking a look at the big picture. On a single family, you can run the numbers real quick and easy, right? You can look at their lease, you can look at how much is left, or there renovations needed that can be upgraded to push the rents as well. But it's a little bit more linear. Commercial, you've got all the things all over the place. Who's managing the property? Is it self-managed, or is there a property management company in place? Are they efficient? And looking at all of those things. And I think just getting the right people around you to give you the advice that you need. And I think the biggest advice I have is just ask questions. If there's something you don't know, get curious about it, because that question will lead to another question that could uncover something that is exactly what you want to hear or what you don't want to hear. And if you get to a place where you're like, I'm not sure about it, if it's not a hell yes, I think it's kind of one of those things you should put on pause and really, really evaluate if it's the right direction.
Yeah, 100%. It's so funny. I was just talking to one of my clients this morning who owns both residential and commercial, and he sent me a deal this morning. I wake up to a text from him. He's like, "Hey, Mike, 4 unit in Montville, Connecticut here, which is not a lot of inventory in Montville, but fair market." And he sent it to me, and he's like, "Okay, seems like a good deal, value add deal. There's 1 unit that needs complete gut rehab, which is what a lot of value add investors are looking for. They don't want something turnkey in that market rate. They want, it's a 4 unit here that's listed for like 225, and ARV typically would be 100K a door, 400 plus thousand. So a value add deal." And I'm going through it, and I'm like, he's like, "Let's make a quick offer. Let's get in this. Like, before the open house starts, let's try to wrap it up." And this is the biggest difference between residential and commercial. So it's a 4 unit, so it's considered residential, as you know.
Yeah.
This property is only 1,600 square feet, and it's a 4 unit. They're all pretty much studios. I'm like, there are no supporting comps. I agree with you. Normally it'd be like a $400,000 ARV. There are no supporting comps to justify this. an appraiser is going to go off the square footage, and it's so low, the square footage, that you are never going to get the ARV you want. And that only happens, and I'm saying this to bring it up because it's important in residential. It's so important because they look for what your neighbor has sold for. So the appraiser is going to look at sold comps based on square footage. He doesn't really care about the income of the property, and it'll never appraise out.
Right.
And you compare that to a commercial, let's say this is a 5 unit, but the square footage was a little bit smaller. You can dramatically increase the value because it's based on the income approach to valuation. So you can do a cash out refinance a lot easier if you just drive up the income and lower the expenses and increase your net operating income. And you divide it by the going cap rate in our area. No brainer. I'd be all over that, but I'm like, Mr. Buyer, let's not jump the gun on this. We'll wait for the open house. We'll take a look, and likely we have to come in under asking because of that square footage. And I think that's the biggest difference between commercial and residential is the valuation and how they determine the valuation.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think it's definitely something that you got to take a slower approach to. Every once in a while, I'll advise a client, okay, we've got to move quick on this. But that's pretty rare, but it's only after we've evaluated, the due diligence documents and we understand the numbers. And even if it looks pretty promising, if you make a quick move, just make sure you've got plenty of outs in the process and you have the due diligence lined out. That's what you've got to figure out. You got to figure out if it'll make sense or not.
Yeah, 100%. So now I know you're an investor as well. So can you, as I guess as someone that's both a broker and investor, how does that change the advice you give clients compared to maybe brokers who are not investors themselves? I think about it like this. Would you go to a financial advisor, someone like, normal guy off the street? Would you go work with a financial advisor who doesn't manage his own portfolio? Yeah. Would you go hire a builder if he hasn't built his own house? And I think about us commercial brokers like that. Like, why would you want to work with a commercial broker who's never invested in commercial properties himself? Maybe he's a little bit older, more experienced, more deals, but like there's something to be said about being in the game yourself. So I'd love for you to speak to that real quick.
Yeah, and that's definitely been something, I've invested in the past, and I invest in a couple of properties in a partnership right now as well that I really believe in and trust. But, I think a broker not having that experience, you can't really empathize with a landlord. You can't empathize with a seller because you haven't been on the property management side or dealing with a tenant directly, understanding the ins and outs of the risks that are available, that you could run into. And I think that's something that I bring as a broker to clients. And I say, listen, I'm not here just to get a deal done and get a commission check. I've been an owner before, and I'm not going to ask you to do a deal that I wouldn't do myself. So I think bringing that perspective and mindset, I think puts people at ease, because you really have to, I think there's something about really understanding what it's like so you can help your clients make wiser decisions, when you're doing the leasing and understanding, okay, are they acquiring this property to lease up and sell, or is it a 10-year hold? Is it longer? Is it a family legacy thing? So your approach is different depending upon the goal of your investor client. But I think it really is, it's bringing that legitimacy of understanding what it's like to go through, and then be willing to advise your client, hey, this is a deal I wouldn't do, and I've done that many times before, and sometimes the landlord will go ahead and do the deal, and unfortunately they come back and blame you for it. But that's just, it comes with the territory. And I think as a broker, thinking about it not emotionally and not just about it being the end goal of a commission check, is thinking about this long term. And I think having that personal investment experience brings that perspective.
Yeah, no, that's great. So let me pose this to you. If someone's listening to this episode right now and they have $100,000 to invest and wants to break into the commercial space for everything we've kind of already talked about, what are the first things maybe you would help consult them with? Based on my experience, I would look into this asset class, and this asset class. Here are the pros and cons to each. Or, $100,000 might just not, maybe in Colorado Springs, might just not be enough yet. Keep saving, or what advice would you give someone like in that position?
Yeah, I think the first thing would be is wanting to know how hands-on they're wanting to be when it comes to the management of the property. Are they looking for something more turnkey? Then I would advise towards, hey, let's look for an industrial triple net lease that you can get in to be a part of. If you're, some people want to do the short-term rentals. Well, that's become a lot more complicated with changing laws and licensing and things like that. So a lot of times people have this idea of what they think they want because they heard it on a podcast, or it's something is showing up on their feed, or someone's pitched them a real estate course. There's a lot of that out there, and it's like, some of that's fine. I think it's important to be educated, but I think you need to be educated more on the real life situations. If somebody doesn't want as much turnover, then going with a more traditional retail shopping center, something like that would probably be a better fit than going multifamily where the leases are coming up every year. Do you want the time and effort to go into turning those spaces over? Or if you're looking at, really it's like looking at, what is their skill set? What have they done in the past? If they're brand new, I would probably start with something smaller that's like, a retail industrial combo of some sort, or small industrial building. And again, on an investment property, you're looking at 30 to 40% down. So what does that get you in the market? Kind of working backwards. Okay, what do I have in my hands right now? Then I would point them again to the professionals, their tax and CPA, and say, what do you think I should do with this money? I want to invest in commercial real estate. What should I be looking for, and how can I protect myself moving forward? I think, again, going back to, it's about asking the right questions and working with the right broker that is really pointing you in the right direction to talk to different people around all of that. Then I would say, go to your bank and say, what can I get pre-approved for? Just because it's like, time is money, and knowing what you have in your hands, and then realizing, okay, if I need to save up another 100,000, then what do I need to do to get to that point? Do I need to do a flip? Do I need to do something else, residential or something smaller, to get that additional revenue that you can turn into, when you sell that, you can always 1031 into a commercial investment property. So having those conversations, and again, I think getting an understanding of the market, working with an expert, and finding out, like, is this the right fit? And I think most of the time, in commercial, it's not quite as emotional as residential. But, I often find people that move from residential into commercial, like you said earlier, they're taking that same mindset into it. But I think it's one of those where you take that pause, you consult, you ask questions, figure out, what's your end goal, and then work backwards into what, do I need to look at office? Maybe it's someone that's like, hey, listen, they've got their own insurance company or whatever, but they want to invest. Well, is there an office building that you can purchase where you can operate out of it and then have additional income from tenants? So there's many different ways to slice it, but it all comes down to what their goal is, and then what their capacity is to manage. And then also, do they have working capital in savings for repairs and the such?
Yeah, 100%. You nailed a lot of good points there. Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, you're a busy commercial broker and you're an investor as well. So one question I like to ask all of our guests towards the end of the show is, how do you spend your day? Walk me from the time you wake up to the time you go to bed, how you're spending your day, and if there's any specific mindset activities you're doing. Maybe it's you got to get a good workout in the morning, or maybe you meditate in the morning, maybe you read, or just walk me through a day in the life of Caleb from the morning you wake up to the time you go to bed.
Yeah. So, I usually get up fairly early, take my son to school, and then try to come back and just kind of have a few minutes, drink some water. If it's been a hard work day, the thing that I am not afraid to do anymore is take breaks when I need it. When my brain is kind of stumped, I think it's important for me to, sometimes I'll lay on the couch for 20 minutes, clear my mind, doing the meditations. And I think something too, because it is such a fast paced business for the most part, is even just on my phone, I have an app that puts affirmations up on it, so that throughout the day I'm being reminded of things and resetting my intentions. But I think for me, the first thing I'll do, when it's work, look at my emails, try to figure out the night before. I've already, written in my planner what I'm going to do tomorrow. So I kind of already have the mindset of, okay, I already know when I wake up what I'm up against. Then I'll take a look at my emails that have come in, and then start prioritizing. I think that's the biggest thing. I think you can get lost in the little things, and every once in a while, I need to tackle a few little things so that I can feel that, okay, I've accomplished this and this, and now I'm going to jump to the big fish. But for the most part, I try to focus every day on my 3 top priorities, and if I get those 3 things done, then I'm good. I'm a perfectionist, and I've had to learn that sometimes good enough is good enough. I mean, we always want to bring our best, and do the best that we can. But there are things in this business that are completely out of our control, and so I spend a good amount of time taking deep breaths, letting things go, and sometimes just when there's that stress, go for a 5-minute walk. Or go out in my backyard and get some movement, sit in the sun, get grounded. But I think, look at the calendar. What are the showings that I have today?
Yeah.
Do we have lease deadlines? Do we have contract deadlines? And really focusing on the priorities for the day, and knowing what decisions to make for yourself and for your clients. But I think it really is about trying to remain as grounded as possible throughout the day. And then, 3 or 4 times a week, I'll jump on a podcast. So it's preparation for that. If there's a listing meeting, preparation for that, putting together a small presentation, but then also just making sure there's time to work on your leads, and things like that. Thankfully, I'm in a place where I don't have to do a whole lot of cold calling anymore. A lot of it is referral-based business, but and I think it's and then also making sure I'm spending time proactively communicating to my clients. So just because I'm getting it done, I don't think is good enough. Your client deserves to know where you are in the process, and sometimes that creates a lot of extra work. But people come back to me all the time because of that communication. So make sure people are in the loop. And I just, every day I've got a list on one side of my planner. Here are the deals that are in the works, where I'm at in process. Here are commissions due. And then here's all the to-dos for today that I can try to get these deals over here across the finish line.
Yeah, no, it's great. Do you ever time block at all?
I do. I will, usually that's for email. Or if I'm working on a very specific project, then I do like to time block so that I know this time is set aside just for this, and do my best not to look at the phone, do my best not to look at email, so that you can stay focused on getting that done and get into the flow.
Yeah. I've been trying to be more proactive about time blocking. One of my biggest challenges, which I'm sure you battled too, is I'll start a project and ADD mind goes crazy, and I'll get a text, and then I'll go back to it, and I'll get a call, and I'm like, I need to literally silence my phone to get anything done. Because I'm just like, we're like so like trained, because obviously if your phone's ringing, that's good, right? You want to answer it. So I have this always have this tendency and urge to just immediately go to my phone for any text or call, but I never get anything done, and it drives me nuts. And I'm not a morning person. I wake up, 7 o'clock, go to the gym, a couple texts and calls there and here, but not getting to the office till 10. But I'd rather work a little bit later. But all throughout the day, it's why didn't I get anything done today? Because on my phone, and I did a time block on it. And it's crazy if you've ever done that. It's crazy to see how much, where you're spending your time. And whether, if you're, just on social media, it's not a good use of time, obviously, but it's the texting and calling with clients. I'm there's got to be a better way around. So,
no, I think you bring a great point. And for me, years ago, I got to the place where, and maybe it's because I do have that ADHD brain as well, and wanting to respond to everything as quickly as possible. And if it's on the list, I want to get it done, right? Sometimes it can get done 2 days from now, and that's okay. You set the expectation to communicate to your client. And so for years, I have not had my phone on ring, period, ever. Unless I know I'm expecting a phone call and I'm, working on a project in the other room, and I need to be able to hear it, because I know that if I hear it, I'm going to go do it, it's
Yes.
going to create some sort of anxiety, some sort of pressure. And so I do need to get better at time blocking myself as well. But I think that little trick of just turning my phone off, and then I pick it up when I'm ready to look at it, and I probably pick it up too many times. But I think for me and my mental sanity and my focus, if I'm hearing these dings and rings all the time, it's so distracting.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Always stuff to work on, and that's what makes this industry great. It's, no day's the same, and we're always growing and improving. So, well, Caleb, thank you so much for right at the 30-minute mark. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm excited to get this one out. And where can people, if people want to contact you, where can they find more about you? Or
They can find me on Instagram, Facebook, and LinkedIn with, linkedin.com/Caleb David, and the same for Instagram and Facebook. You can also go to davidcommercial.com. We love talking to people, even if you're not going to become a client. If there's questions we can answer and educate you on, you can do that. You can also listen into the podcast Commercial Real Estate Unfiltered on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. We're just here to support our communities, whether it's here locally or nationwide, whatever we can do to be a resource and help demystify commercial real estate. Yes. We'd love to do that.
Awesome. And we'll link everything in the show notes as well. And again, if you like what you heard today, myself and Caleb, be sure to like and subscribe. Sky's the Limit Podcast, also available on YouTube, Spotify, and Apple. So thank you all for listening. Thank you, Caleb, and we'll chat soon, I'm sure.
Sounds great. Thanks for having me.
See you later. Bye. Thank you for watching Sky's the Limit. We're always releasing new real estate content, so if there's something you want to hear, be sure to leave a comment. And don't forget to subscribe to our channel.